Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amanda Martinez. I am the Training Program Manager for Mental Health America of Hawaii. And the presentation we have for you all today is called Mental Wellness. It's just tips and strategies for surviving and thriving. Just a couple housekeeping things before I jump into the slideshow. We are in webinar format, so don't worry about accidentally turning on your cameras or unmuting yourself. That should not happen, but I do encourage interaction. I like to keep the chat box open during our entire time together. So please feel free to drop any kind of comments or responses or even questions in there if you'd like. There's a Q&A feature that is available to you as well. I'm hoping to leave some time at the end to address any questions that do pop up, but if they pop up organically for you, go ahead and drop them in the chat and I'll address them as we move along. This is being recorded, so you will have access to this recording after today in the follow-up email, including a copy of the slide deck. So don't worry too much also about having a photographic memory or trying to take quick snapshots of the slides. You will have access to those afterwards as well. You'll notice that a lot of the images in this presentation have that tag at Live Now. That's because they actually come from our Instagram page at Live Now, which provides even more kind of self-care tips and strategies. And if you have attended any of our other trainings or presentations before, you know that we love our quotes. So this one we have for today is "The best way out is always through." And I think it's a quote that really captures how we navigate through kind of tough situations, right? I know the past few years have kind of been all over the place. And, the things that we encountered and had to kind of move through weren't always things that we could just avoid or necessarily turn a blind eye to what was happening. But what we could do, what we have been doing and what we can continue to do is work through it together. So for today, we'll be kind of exploring different pieces that make up self-care, why it's important that we practice self-care, and how can we use self-care to build emotional strength within ourselves, and maybe how can we pass along those skills to others as well. So why don't we start by addressing some myths about self-care, right? So these are just a couple of the ones we may have heard circulated over the past few years, and I have a quick poll just trying to make it a little more interactive than me just here talking at you. But how many of you have seen or heard some of these myths kind of being circulated over the last few years, maybe just in everyday conversations or maybe posts on social media? See the responses coming in, so thank you for those of you who are able to participate. The poll should have popped up automatically on your screen and the responses should be anonymous, so again, don't worry about your name popping up next to your response. I usually like to wait till a majority of folks have had a chance to answer that poll, which looks like we're pretty much there. So let's take a look at our results here. So it looks like everyone who was able to answer 100% said yes, they've absolutely heard some of these myths being circulated, right? And I kind of threw in that "what is self-care" question at the end just to have a little fun, right? But yeah, absolutely, we've heard a bunch of these kind of myths being circulated around, right? So addressing some of these, the first one we see is "I need to be productive," and really productivity can be reframed to also include self-care time and also space for relaxation, right? Kind of giving ourselves a break. And especially during difficult or stressful times, sometimes our priorities shift where we have to really focus on taking care of other people, right? Whether it's loved ones, maybe it's we have to prioritize and really focus on our jobs and our tasks that are associated with that. And so we kind of neglect that self-care piece, or at least we don't include it in our feeling of being productive, but we absolutely can reframe it in that way. An easy way to do that is to kind of take pride in those little wins. Okay, I woke up on time today. I washed my hair today. The kids learned something new, right? Those are all those little wins that we can take some pride in and add to our productivity, right? Or our feeling of being productive. And really working self-care in throughout your day is absolutely a sign of productivity. Some other things you may have heard, I shouldn't be feeling a certain way, or so-and-so has it worse, so I shouldn't complain, or I will only feel this way once, kind of really, really highlighting our emotions, right? And our moods and kind of how we feel. We'd have to be careful not to invalidate you or other people's experiences through cross comparison. So when we say things like, well, I shouldn't be too upset by this because there's people out there who have it way worse than I do, right? Or what happened to them is way worse than what happened to me. And really what it comes down to it is your experiences are your experiences and they are absolutely valid. And it's normal for us to have mixed emotions, right? It's even normal for us to sometimes have circular emotions. So at one point we may be feeling pretty okay, pretty good, in that good mood. And then we move right into feeling stressed and anxious or upset. And then we could circle right back around to feeling okay again, right? Or vice versa, right? Circle right back around to feeling stressed and anxious again. And that's kind of a normal part of just being a human in general, is we experience mixed emotions or circular emotions that we don't necessarily have a whole lot of control over. You know, those things pop up just as they pop up. But what we do have some control over at the very least is our responses to them, right? What are we doing to help ourselves manage those increasing levels of stress or anxiety? Or what are we doing to help ourselves kind of cope, right? To make ourselves feel better, or to calm ourselves down when we feel overwhelmed. And we always want to do our best to try at least to find positive, healthy ways, right, to cope, especially when those kind of negative emotions come up for us. Another myth we may have heard is I don't need self-care. I'm sure I don't have to tell any of you this, but we all need self-care, even when you feel like you don't need self-care. We should still be taking the time to regularly practice that on a day-to-day basis. We can compare it to like how we would want to invest in our finances, right? Hopefully we are able to put a little bit of away on a regular basis so that we have something to pull from just in case something comes up down the road, right? Our car kind of breaks down or an unexpected bill pops up, right? We have a little bit of cushion. But we can think of self-care in the same way because all we're doing is investing in our emotional bank accounts. So the more that we can put away into our emotional bank accounts on a regular basis, then the more we're going to have to pull from, because there may come a time down the road where we will have to pull from our emotional bank accounts to support another person or sometimes even support ourselves. Another myth we may have heard or seen is things are getting better, so I should feel better. Okay. We know that there has been a lot of anxiety surrounding re-entry, and although things may be seemingly quote unquote getting better, in the sense that we don't have to quarantine anymore or physically distance as much as we did before, it's still okay to feel some anxiety, especially surrounding your feeling of safety, right? And taking your health into account. So again, it's really important to go back and make sure we're validating our emotions and also learning ways to cope, right, with any kind of increasing levels of stress and anxiety. I think it's really important for us to acknowledge and to touch upon this piece of grief. And it's something that we all have experienced over the past few years, right? And what grief really is a sense of loss. And everyone in our communities has experienced that kind of sense of loss, whether it was a death of a family member or loved one, could have been a loss of relationship. Maybe it was a loss of expectations for how your year was going to turn out or for how something was going to turn out. Didn't quite work out the way we planned or the way that we hoped, right? And so we experience that kind of sense of loss in a lot of different areas at a lot of different levels. And again, it's really important that we not cross compare our grief experiences with others. We can try to gain some context for our situation, but just be careful not to invalidate, right, how we feel because we think that other people have it worse. Pain is pain, and we all should have some support around that if we need it. And especially for someone who may have a history of trauma, when they experience a new challenge or experience another kind of portion of grief, it may intensify or even bring up similar feelings from their past. And it may seem kind of confusing as the situations could be completely different, right? And not related whatsoever. But what research has shown is that the similarity is really in the feelings, right? In the pain that a person experiences and how those really become linked and really become connected. So if you feel that this may be a concern for you, or even a concern for a loved one, please absolutely reach out for help and support. We'll be going over a bunch of different resources that are available to us more toward the end of the presentation, but just know that there are some resources that are out there. And know that we all cope differently, right? We all cope differently, we all grieve differently, but we don't have to go through things alone, right? So we want to be able to honor that process, not just for ourselves, but for other people who may be grieving as well. Here's a model by Dr. Kubler-Ross. It's kind of used as a loose framework to begin that conversation or to have a better kind of understanding of what grief may look like. So just quick disclaimer, I'm not a mental health clinician. Right? I'm not a psychologist or a counselor or therapist or a social worker or anything like that. My background's in public health. And if you know anything about public health folks, is that we love our models and our theories to try to explain human behavior, right? So this really is just to help us get a little bit of a better understanding of the different kind of stages or different pieces that make up grief. So there may be some denial, right? Not here, not me. Denying the reality of a situation can be part shock, right? It's kind of still shocked that this thing even happened, but it may also be part of, if I don't look at it, it won't look at me, right? Just avoidance, denying the reality of a situation. There may be some feelings of anger, which usually stems from anxiety, because coming or feeling not in control of a situation can absolutely lead to feelings of anxiety and anger and irritability. And again, we can't control everything, including our emotions. So it's important that we do our best to focus on what we can control, right? Like our responses and how are we coping, which we will talk about a little more in depth on how to do that in just a couple slides here. There may be some bargaining happening, so we may be looking for or sharing stories of really extreme situations that may be kind of related to ours or related to current happenings in the world, on social media or, by word of mouth. And the attention is kind of like informing others, right? Raising awareness that these things are happening. But with those really extreme types of stories and situations, it's also meant to be a little bit of a shock factor, right? To get a reaction out of people. And that may not be the most helpful or useful when we're already feeling high levels of stress or anxiety. So just got to be really aware of what we are seeing and sharing, especially on social media. There may be feelings of depression, right? Increased feelings of sadness, and that's absolutely normal and definitely a part of grief. But if it really starts to impact your life in a significant way, like if it starts to impact your ability to function on a day-to-day basis, then that's when you want to think about reaching out for extra help and supports. Okay? And again, there's tons of resources that are out there. Acceptance can also be a part of the grieving process. Radical acceptance, hold on to that. I have a whole slide dedicated to it. We'll talk about it very shortly here. But it is good to note that these stages, are not linear, right? People move in and out of them at different times. Sometimes we circle right through these stages multiple times throughout our grief process. But, again, find support around that if you find it still kind of impacting your day-to-day, or if, some time has passed and you're still feeling or struggling getting a handle on it, please absolutely reach out for help and supports. So warning signs that we want to be looking out or listening for, either within our own selves or within other people, just kind of further helping us identify when is that good time that we want to reach out for that extra help and support, right? Mood dysregulation for 2 weeks or longer, I know sounds kind of clinical, but all we mean by this is, has someone's mood been impacted for a significant amount of time, long enough for us to start to notice, right? Someone acting differently than they normally do. Do they seem more irritable or frustrated, or do they seem in a more depressed mood, right? Have they seemed down or withdrawn? Anhedonia, again, just another clinical term for loss of interest. So someone really starts to kind of pull away. So whether it's withdrawing and not doing the things that they used to really enjoy doing before, or they are doing those things and it doesn't give them the same kind of joy or satisfaction as it did before. Maybe it's pulling away socially, right? Not engaging as much with family or friends as they did before. If it's having a negative impact on productivity, right? So for our youth, showing up to class and learning new things, or for adults, right? Showing up to work and an ability to get things done and to get through tasks. If it's affecting someone's ability to physically take care of themselves, right? To eat regular meals, to get a good amount of sleep every night, or if it's starting to affect connections with other people, right? If it's starting to have an impact on our friendships and our relationships within our social circles, again, that's just a good kind of check mark for us that, like, oh, maybe we want to check in with this person, or if we're recognizing these things within our own lives, maybe this is a good time for me to reach out for that extra help and support. Now, all of these things should be taken into or taken with a little bit of context. Okay, there has been an impact on mental health over the past few years, kind of across the board for everyone. We've seen increased experiences of anxiety, of depression, extreme levels of stress, of substance use disorders, all of these things. So all these warning signs have to kind of be taken into context because people's thresholds for experiences of stress or anxiety, or even sometimes sleep-related issues, may have increased overall because of everything that has been happening over the past couple of years. But really what we want to focus on and be aware of is how much of an impact is this having on mine or someone else's day-to-day. When someone is struggling at work, these are some of the warning signs that we may recognize or that we want to look out for. They're pretty similar to the ones on the previous slide, so I won't go through each and every single one of them. It's just that they happen kind of in that work setting, right? So maybe we are not taking care of ourselves throughout our work day, right? Maybe we are feeling really tired. We have a hard time concentrating or being focused. Maybe we are isolating ourselves even at work, right? Usually when we are, or if you are someone who is really engaged with their coworkers, right? And kind of chatting and having small talk, and you're kind of pulling away from that, right? Not engaging as much. Maybe someone is skipping breaks, right? We're kind of pushing through or working through our breaks, right? We get our lunch and then we're like, I'm going to take this bite and then I'm going to answer this email, which guilty, right? I've done that plenty of times. But sometimes it happens, right? Maybe we don't get the same kind of joy or satisfaction out of our work or out of our career as we did before, especially if it was something that you're, really passionate about and you looked forward to going to work every day, but you don't have that same type of feeling surrounding it. Could be a warning sign. So again, all of these things are kind of in that context of a workplace setting. One of the ones I did want to highlight before I move on are recent life stressors, right? And especially during that period of time where a lot of us were kind of working remotely, or maybe some of us still are working remotely or working from home. What we were doing is inviting people into our homes, right? And virtually, of course, but we were still kind of inviting people into our homes. So it makes sense that things that happen in our personal life would sometimes bleed into or have an impact on our work life as well, because we were kind of in that same place. And I know historically, a lot of people's views surrounding work and personal life have been very separated, right? You leave work at work and you leave home at home. But when those settings start to blend, it's really hard to kind of set those boundaries. So it's just something to acknowledge. Compassion fatigue is another thing that I won't dive too deep into, but you can go back and review this slide after today. And there are also free like compassion fatigue screenings that you can take online just to kind of get an idea, is this something that I may be struggling with or something that I have in my life, and where I may be and what kind of resources are out there. What I really did want to highlight with the slide is that last kind of topic is what can you do, right? What can you do to help combat or mitigate compassion fatigue? So one of them is to practice radical acceptance, which I promise we will talk about in just a few slides here. Another way that we can help combat this is practice gratitude, right? On a regular basis, and have some compassion for ourselves, right? Have compassion for yourself. What you are doing is absolutely important. Thank you for doing it. And please make sure that you are taking care of yourselves too, so that you can prevent that burnout from happening or prevent that compassion fatigue from happening. Protective factors are always good for us to know, at least have some idea about, because I think these types of presentations sometimes are very focused on what are the risk factors, right? What are those things that could put someone at risk for developing a mental health challenge, for example? But there's also protective factors that are out there. And, it's just as important, if not more so, to highlight what these protective factors are, especially when we talk about building resiliency. And I know that word has kind of been thrown around a lot over the past few years as well, right? We got to be resilient as an individual, we got to be resilient as a community. But there are actually things that help boost that sense of resiliency. And they can be identified on multiple levels, right? Starting on an individual level and leading all the way up and broadening out to a societal level as well, to be able to continue building that sense of resiliency. All right, now onto the fun stuff, right? Some tips on how to practice self-care and how do we take care of ourselves. I've already mentioned quite a few times the importance of validating our emotions, right? And finding positive, healthy ways to work through them to the best of our ability. Another way that we can take care of our mental health is to stay connected. We're very social beings. We crave that feeling of feeling supported and feeling valued by the people that we care about and who care about us too. We thrive when we feel connected to other people, when we feel connected to a community, whatever that community may be. And I'm not saying you have to be super popular, right, with a million different friends or this giant social group. As long as you have a couple solid connections in your life, then that's great. That's going to do wonders in boosting your sense of resiliency and feeling like you do have someone that you can turn to if you need to. We want to schedule in our self-care. Another thing that we like, most of us like as human beings, is routine and consistency. So keeping a routine or having some sense of a routine really helps to provide structure to our lives. It helps provide structure to our day-to-day, but this also includes taking that time to schedule in that self-care. We want to identify online resources, right, or even in-person resources that people can connect to. Sometimes we want to share these things via social media, and we really want to make sure that we are using social media responsibly, which I will talk about in just a couple slides. But especially when we are sharing kind of resources and passing along information, we want to make sure that we are doing so in a safe and responsible way. Maybe we have to go back to the basics, right? Sometimes practicing self-care itself can seem really overwhelming because there's so many different ways to be able to do it. So if you're feeling kind of unsure about where to start, or I don't even know how to practice it or what area to kind of look into and how to take care of my well-being, start with the basics, right? Take a look at your sleep hygiene. How much sleep are you getting every night? What's the type of sleep or the quality of sleep that you are getting every night? Are you tossing and turning all night or waking up randomly, right? Are you drinking enough water throughout your day? Are you able to stay hydrated? Are you eating a healthy, balanced diet to the best of your ability? Are you being physically active on a regular basis? So sometimes that self-care is kind of going back to those basics and what am I doing to take care of myself on that basic level. Sometimes we want to monitor our news intake or our information intake, right? I know that we might have a little bit of FOMO, so we're always checking social media, seeing what people are up to and wanting to stay kind of up to date on those happenings. Or maybe we find ourselves constantly checking the news because we just want to be informed and stay up to date on what's happening in our community or happening in the world today. But continuously checking may not always be the most helpful approach to have, especially if you're experiencing higher levels of anxiety or higher levels of stress, because oftentimes what we find in the news are negative things, right? So we're kind of piling up on that anxiety and stress, the more negative things that we consume. So if you are a news checker, I would consider maybe just setting a couple times throughout the day to be able to get the information that you need instead of continuously checking all the way throughout. Another way that we can help take care of ourselves is actually reaching out and giving back. Right? Our brains are kind of wired for that. There are more, this is not my most scientific language to use, but there's more feel-good chemicals that are released in our brain when we do kind things for other people than when other people try to do kind things for us, right? And when we talk about reaching out, giving back or checking in, it doesn't have to be huge grand gestures or something you have to spend a whole lot of money on or like major time commitments, anything like that. It could be something really simple as sending a message to a friend and just saying, hey, I was thinking about you today. I hope you have a great day today. And I'm just really grateful to have your friendship in my life, right? That's super easy to do. It takes just a couple seconds to type something like that out. And it's probably going to make your friend or loved one feel pretty good to know that they're thought of and that they are appreciated for just being themselves. Zoom fatigue, I think, is just something important to acknowledge since we're on Zoom right now and you're listening to me talk. Okay. Zoom fatigue is a real thing, and I know that we have been getting back to more in-person kind of meetings and in-person settings, but we still maybe have a lot of screen time during our day. So here are just some quick tips to help mitigate that Zoom fatigue that I know we all have felt before, or maybe even currently be feeling. If this is like your fifth Zoom meeting of the day, I apologize. I hope this is more of the fun one. Use the biggest screen available. Do your best to kind of declutter your space, right, in a physical sense, right? Kind of decluttering and taking away that stress. Help to adjust the lighting, maybe to decrease any fatigue that may be put on your eyes. Find the most comfortable chair as you can and still stay active, right? Stand up and stretch every once in a while. If you have one of those standing desks like I'm using right now, raise it up, right? Just to be able to give yourself more space to kind of move around. So there are some ways that we can help mitigate this Zoom fatigue. I'll let you dive a little deeper into the slide on your own time there. All right, social media, right? I know it's very prevalent in our lives. Is that social media use, right? And how we connect with each other, sometimes how we find out information or share resources. So how exactly can we go about this in a responsible way? Make a sandwich out of it. And who doesn't love sandwiches, right? So the idea is if you have something difficult to share, make a sandwich out of it, right? Something positive, something challenging, and then something positive again, right? Kind of sandwiching it with positivity. So for example, if you have something kind of challenging to share, first you want to share something that's more funny, a little bit more lighthearted, like a funny talking animal video. Then you're going to share that challenging but useful piece of information that's coming from a reputable source. And then following it up with something funny and lighthearted again, right? Like maybe something that just kind of makes you feel good inside. So that way, by doing this, there are more positive posts that are coming up on people's feeds and timelines than negative ones. And we know that algorithm is a real specific for us, right? It learns very quickly. So what we click on and what we consume actually informs what we see, right? So we want to do our best to combat that a little bit by sharing more positive things than negative. And know that it's okay to take a break every once in a while, right? Take a step back, unplug, whether that's for part of a day or a more extended period of time. It's helpful to check in. Okay, ask yourself, do I feel better after going on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat, whatever social media platform is still around or that you may be using? And that answer is, I'm not sure, I don't know, or not really, or I actually feel worse every time I go on social media. Might be a good indication that it's having a more negative impact on our mental health or a negative impact on our well-being. So it's absolutely okay to kind of take that break or take that step back. And know how to report safety concerns as well. On all of these platforms now, there are ways for you to report a post, report a comment, or report a user if you are concerned for their safety. So kind of know what that process is, just in case you come across a post or someone that you may be concerned about. All right, next we have staying present, okay? You'll find fun activities that you can download for free on our website as well, like this mindfulness bingo card that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen or at the slide. So if you want to gamify self-care or gamify practicing mindfulness, bingo is always a fun way to go. Staying present focus or choosing the present focus can really help to manage increasing levels of anxiety. It can help us to focus on the things that we do have control over. And really, when we choose the present focus, we're acknowledging that the past has already happened. We can try our best to plan for the future, right? Or to prepare for the future, but no one can really tell the future, right? As much as we want to try to prepare and be ready for things, is sometimes things are out of our control. But what we really have the ability to influence or have some control over is our present. So really, again, staying present focus helps to not only invest in ourselves and our mental health, but really build that emotional strength that we can use in the future. This can also include practicing gratitude, which I'll expand upon a little bit more, I think, on the very next slide here. Radical acceptance. Again, I promise I'll talk about radical acceptance in just a couple slides. But we can also utilize things like meditation or prayer, right? It can go a really long way in being able to stay in the present, but it takes some practice, right? It's actually really hard to only focus on one thing at a time and not multitask, right? So a creative way we can go about this sometimes is taking advantage of those more routine tasks, right? And turning them into more mindful ones. If you're washing the dishes or taking a shower, for example, right? If you've ever noticed that you come up with some of your best arguments or comebacks or ideas or daydreams when you're in the shower, it's because our bodies are kind of on autopilot, right? We're just going through the motions. We've done it a million times before, and it frees up our mind to kind of wander. But it can also be an opportunity for us to be in the present, right? And really focus on our different senses, right? What is the smell of our shampoo or body wash? What is the feeling of my fingers running through my hair as I wash it, right? And really grounding ourselves and focusing on the present by zoning in or honing in on our senses. Okay? We can be present, focused in connecting with other people as well, and being accessible, responsive, engaged, being a good listener. It may seem like an easy thing to do to be a good listener, but it actually takes some work, right? It's more than just sitting there and letting someone talk at you like you're all doing today with me talking at you. But to be really fully present with someone and have a conversation means minimizing distractions. It means sometimes asking questions for clarification or to show that you're tracking, to show that you're understanding, and validating responses as well, kind of responding in different ways, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, right? And sometimes withholding our own biases or judgments if we have any. So again, it takes some work to be a good listener, but it's absolutely an area where we can continue to stay present focused. All right, gratitude. So you can see on the slide is the attitude, or you would be able to. My slide advanced, there we go, right? So we want to be able to practice gratitude on a regular basis, right? Being grateful and reflecting upon that gratefulness isn't something that should only come around once a year on Thanksgiving, right? When we're sitting around the dinner table and we go around and like name one thing that you're thankful for this year, okay? Gratitude and thankfulness is something that we should be practicing regularly, and research actually shows that this does help boost our overall well-being. It does have positive impacts on our mental health. So take that time to reflect, whether it's at the end of your day or at the end of your week, and ask yourself some of these questions here, like what am I grateful for today? Or what I'm grateful for that happened in this week? What relationship, what connection am I most thankful for? What's a challenging part of my life that I'm grateful for because it taught me about myself? Right? So this is something that can be possible is practicing gratitude within our grief, right? And it takes some work and it may be hard to kind of wrap our minds around this, but we can absolutely do this. And what it looks like is taking that time and saying, I am grateful for my grief because it reminds me that I have been loved and I have loved. And we touched upon grief earlier in this presentation already, but I think it's important to kind of frame it in this way as well as we move along in our grief journey. And it's absolutely a grief journey. It may not always be the easiest thing for us to do to find gratitude along the way. It may take some work, right? Even within my own grief journey, it takes some work sometimes to reflect and think about what I'm thankful for within my own experiences. But it is absolutely possible, and it can help us kind of process and heal and start to move forward. All right, finally, we're coming up on radical acceptance, okay? So radical acceptance ultimately is accepting reality. So anticlimactic, right? But that's really what it is, right? Is accepting the reality of the situation, right? When we hold on to thoughts of unfairness or, kind of ruminating over things that have happened or things that are out of our control, it doesn't help us in accepting the reality of what that situation is. And that's really what keeps us in that stuck place, right? When we're stuck ruminating or we're stuck, don't quite know which way to turn or which way to go. what we want to do with radical acceptance is, if I have the ability to change something, I'll do my best to change it. But if I don't have the ability to change something, then I also have to do my best to accept that, right? And try to move forward, or try to push through it. And I know it's really easy for me to kind of summarize that and have this, wonderful PowerPoint slide on radical acceptance, but it's a completely different thing to actually practice it. And I do want to note that acceptance does not have to be agreement, right? Accepting that something painful happened is not the same thing, or accepting that something painful happened and moving forward from that is not the same thing as saying it's okay that a painful thing happened, right? Rather that we're just taking our time and our energy from focusing on that painful thing, and instead we're putting it towards healing from it and moving forward from it. And again, I know that it's easy to summarize that, but it's a different thing to practice it. Sometimes it's a daily practice, not something that just happens overnight, but every single day we got to practice this radical acceptance. And sometimes it even takes the help of a mental health professional, right, to kind of help us along with letting go of the things that we don't have control over, but it can be incredibly helpful in that process of healing and moving through challenging situations. It can be incredibly helpful in easing anxiety levels as well. Another way that we can practice self-care and take care of our well-being is to find our flow. So there's actually activities that we have in our lives that provide an extra psychological boost. Those are the activities that totally absorb us, right? They challenge us without overstressing us or overwhelming us. Maybe they make us feel fulfilled. There's those activities where you're sitting down to do, or whatever you're doing, you're immersed in it. You think maybe half an hour has gone by, but you look up at the clock and it's been a couple of hours, right? We're just so focused on what we're doing. And we really love and we really enjoy what we're doing as well. Right? And everyone has their own sources of flow. For some, it may be catching a wave, right? If you're into surfing. For others, it may be cooking or gardening, sometimes even playing video games. And whatever your flow, it helps you to feel a little bit more effective, confident, and in control, right, in your day-to-day, or at least within that activity. So to find our flow, we want to identify the high points of our day, right? Try to note when you're in that in the zone feeling and do those activities or similar activities more often. Don't try to look for flow in passive pursuits. Unfortunately, binge watching Netflix, right, for example, is not going to offer us the challenge that's often needed to spark that sense of flow. But once you do find something that sparks it, maybe we can consider raising the difficulty level in some way, right? Not to over challenge us or to overwhelm us, but to continue sparking that flow. So there was a while where I was really into like jigsaw puzzles, right? And it helped me focus, got me in that in the zone feeling, and I could increase the difficulty or decrease the difficulty depending on what kind of day I was having, right? I could choose how many pieces I went with, and I had it on my tablet, right? So I didn't have to clean up all of those puzzle pieces at the end or find a place to store it, but find little things like that for yourself too. We can inject flow, right, into some of those regular activities, right? So injecting more meaning or more ingenuity into those more mundane or routine tasks can make them more rewarding. And make the space and honor that space for flow to happen, for that creativity to happen. If you've got a little break in your schedule because one of your many, many Zoom meetings got canceled, and you're scrambling around, trying to fill that space to feel productive, try just letting it be, right? Letting it sit, even if that's you literally just sitting there and sitting and taking a break. Do some breathing exercises, do some grounding exercises. Allow that time and that space for whatever to pop up. We can also help our little ones practice self-care too. We want to make sure, of course, that we're being developmentally appropriate. So, for example, we're not going to jump into the science behind different diseases or illnesses or mental health challenges, but rather maybe we can start to have a conversation about what happens when someone is feeling unwell, right? They stay home and they rest, or they take a break, or they go see the doctor. And we can also empower our little ones to help too. What are things that we can do to make someone who is feeling sick or feeling unwell feel better? Maybe we could draw them a fun picture. Maybe we can write them a card. All of these things, kind of empowering them to kind of reach out and give back in little ways too. Help them manage their schedules. You may or may not be aware of this, but adults sometimes are not the best at managing their schedules, right? But our kids especially rely upon us as adults to manage their schedules and their routines and help gain that kind of understanding of what time is. There are tons of resources that are out there, really fun activities that you can do to help your little ones practice self-care, even practice mindfulness as well. There are mindful like eating exercises that are out there. There are fun books, like a couple of examples you could see on the right-hand side of the slide. We can even teach breathing exercises to our little ones using bubbles, right? Who doesn't love bubbles? If you tell the little one to blow the biggest bubble that they can, they're going to start to really think about what kind of breath they're taking, because if they blow too quickly, that bubble's going to burst right away, right? If you blow too slowly, then that bubble's not going to expand, right, to the size that we want to get it to. So it's a really creative way to kind of get a little one starting to think about what type of breath am I taking. There are mindfulness exercises that are out there too, that we can utilize to help start to create these little emotional toolboxes, right? So these examples are really specific to grounding, right? Kind of engaging our senses. The coloring sheets on the right-hand side can also be found and downloaded for free from our website. So if you have the time, you can have them do an exercise with you and kind of read it aloud, right? So for example, a tree has roots that flow deep into the earth. Some forests are so old that tree roots weave together and hold them all in place. When you feel stressed or upset, you can be like a tree and remember to connect to the ground. You ground by taking in a big breath through your nose, slowly letting it out through your mouth. Then you can say, I am as tall as a tree. My feet are like roots on the ground. My back is straight like the trunk of a tree. My arms are like branches that I can stretch right to the sky. And when I wiggle my fingers, they are like leaves in the wind. My head is the canopy of the tree, right? I can see all around me. I can be like a tree, right? So super short, simple exercise that really helps the little one kind of engage with their senses. Sometimes a little fun for us as adults to do something like this too, right? To kind of connect with our creative side. The core of grounding is really, again, engaging your senses, bringing more awareness to your body and to your environment. And typically, or at least hopefully, adults know how to ground, right? How to engage their senses, but it's a little different with kids. And so it's good news for us that we can do so in creative ways to make it a little more fun. As we move through development, adolescent thinking and emotional intelligence becomes a little more sophisticated, a little more complex. So it makes sense that all of these skills start to become a little more sophisticated and complex as well. But there are ways that we can encourage our youth to practice self-care, and we absolutely should be encouraging our youth to do this. Whether it's on social media, right? Encouraging them to be responsible in their social media use, right? Reminding our youth that even if we're online or, interacting with people online, that we should always remain respectful and compassionate, even when there may be differences of opinions at times or things that we don't always see eye to eye on, that at the very least, there is that level of respect there. But also asking, is what I'm posting, is what I'm commenting, is what I'm sharing helpful, right? If it's not helpful for the situation, it might be best to hold off from sharing that. We can empower them to help and give back as well, whether it's with volunteer work or encouraging them to check in on their friends and loved ones too. We can help them manage their schedules, right? Hopefully they have kind of a better idea or better understanding of what goes into their schedule. But we can help with this too, right? For example, a week may seem like a lifetime for a teenager, but it may seem like a drop in a bucket for us as adults, right? That time just kind of flies by. So really maintaining schedules can help provide that structure within their own day as well. Encourage them to check in with themselves, check in with their own emotions, and it may take some help from us as supportive adults to help them identify what exactly is it that I'm feeling, right? And also recognize that irritability and anger can be associated with a more depressed mood. When we think of Being in a depressed mood, we think of feeling sad, right? Or feeling down, but sometimes it may present itself as irritability or frustration and anger as well. So we want to take a look at that entire spectrum of our emotions and what that may entail. We want to ask questions too, encourage our youth to ask questions, not just kind of checking in, but especially if someone may be unsafe or if they're having thoughts of suicide, ask that question, right? Are you thinking about suicide? And I know it's, something we may have heard before, that we want to stay away from that question because we don't want to put the idea in someone's head. And it doesn't work like that. If we don't ask, we don't know. And if we don't know, how are we supposed to try to help that person? But if you feel uncomfortable or unprepared in asking a question like that, that's okay too. There are resources that are out there. We'll give some of them to you at the end. We also have other presentations and trainings here at Mental Health America of Hawaii that are designed to get you feeling a little bit more comfortable in asking a direct question like that. So just know that there are opportunities to learn and grow, and including resources that are out there to connect to. Like our children, right, there's a lot of really great resources online for our youth. But again, we want to make sure we're doing our homework before we pass them along. They come from reputable sources or reliable sources. But by building these emotional toolboxes for children, by building them for our adolescents and for our youth, they're able then to carry them, right, through to young adulthood or even through to full-on adulthood. I don't know why I said full-on adulthood, right? Doesn't quite make sense. You know what I mean, though, right? So support plans are not just for folks who may be in a crisis. Every single one of us should have some idea of what our support plan is. Who is in our support system, right? Who is it that I know that I can go to when I need someone to lean on, right? When I'm going through a difficult time, who can I lean on? Who can I talk to? But also think about those people that you just like being around, okay? Because they make you feel better. They're super funny. They find the funniest TikTok videos, okay? They send you the best memes, or they're just really witty and they make you laugh, right? Identify who those people are as well, because we have different connections with different people in our life that we can rely on at different times. If we have providers in our life, make sure we have their contact information on hand or somewhere that is accessible, including crisis resources as well. I always encourage youth and adults to program crisis resources directly into your phones, right? Put them into your contacts. That way, if you ever find yourself having to call or text one of them, you won't be scrambling around looking for that piece of paper that you got from that one training a long time ago, or searching Google for the right one, right? You'll already have those resources programmed in. And I know we talk about helping our youth have a kind of bigger understanding of identity and of life, but sometimes it's helpful for us as adults too to, check in, to reflect throughout our lifetime, ask those quote unquote bigger questions like, who am I? Right? What kind of person do I want to be? What gives my life meaning? What helps me when I feel down or upset? What helps me feel better? What kind of impact do I want to have on the world? How am I treating the people that I have in my life? So sometimes we do have to ask ourselves those kind of bigger questions. There are resources, like I said, and you've seen kind of scattered throughout this presentation here through our website. So if you go to mentalhealthhawaii.org, you'll see this Get Connected banner page at the top. If you click on that, you'll find fun things like other online resources we've been compiling, those printable information and activity like those coloring pages or that mindfulness bingo. We are also all over social media, as you can see. So if you're on social media as well, please connect with us. We're on Facebook. We got a couple groups that we run. So we have our Busy Bees, which has a bunch of fun animal videos, activities for little ones to do to take care of their mental health. There's also a book club, right, for book recommendations or kind of inspiring quotes about wellness and mental health. We got a couple pages on Instagram. You've seen those graphics from @LiveNow. MHA Hawaii is our general kind of page. We're on TikTok, we're on Twitter. Our YouTube channel is where we house a lot of previous recordings of our trainings and presentations. It's where this one is going to go. After that recording is processed, you can also find other things like mindfulness, or ways to practice mindfulness, I should say, learning specific coping skills like breathing exercises or grounding exercises. There are 4-minute meditation videos on there as well. So if you got, a little bit of a break between meetings, you just want to watch something, you could sit there, right? Be present, focus, throw in one of our 4-minute mindfulness videos to help you along in that process. No Shame, Get Help is a campaign that we launched recently just to help continue to raise awareness, to promote mental wellness, and to help practice some suicide prevention in our communities. It's a website that was kind of designed for youth, but I think a lot of adults can also benefit from this website. It's really easy to navigate, finding out more information, what kind of resources are out there, how to check in with someone. There's tons of crisis resources that are out there as well. I'll make sure I send all of these over to you in the follow-up email. 988 is the National Suicide and Crisis Line. Hawaii Cares is kind of our local crisis line, but you can also call Hawaii Cares if you're looking for mental health related services or substance use related services. They can help point you in the right direction. Here's a crisis text line for those of us who maybe don't like talking on the phone all the time. And the Trevor Helpline is one of my favorite, or the Trevor Project, I should say, is one of my favorite resources to pass along. Happy Pride Month if you celebrate. But it's a really wonderful resource for our LGBTQ plus youth to really find that support. They have their own 24/7 helpline, their own text line, their own chat feature as well. Other kind of crisis resources surrounding intimate partner violence, domestic violence, elder abuse, child trafficking, all of those things are things that we should be aware of, right? A lot more time has been spent at home, but we know not every home is a safe space. So we just want to have some idea at least of what kind of additional crisis resources are out there. There are free apps that you can download too to help you on your self-care journey, if I could say that. COVID Coach is one that came out, helps you track your mood, helps you learn different kind of coping skills. CBTI is a great app that helps you take a look at your sleep hygiene, right? So how much sleep am I getting? What kind of quality sleep am I getting? What are some different tips and tools to help me improve my sleeping habits? That is pretty much everything that I have for you for today. I did say I would try to leave some time at the end for any questions that popped up, so I'm glad I was able to stick to my word. But if you have any questions that pop up after today, please feel free to reach out. You got our phone numbers right on there. You could go to our websites. We're always happy to answer any type of kind of general questions that we can, or help connect people to different types of resources or programs that are related to mental health here in Hawaii. There's free online screenings that you can take as well, just to check in with yourself. Like there's an anxiety screening test, there's a depression screening test, and it's not meant to diagnose ourselves, right, with a mental health challenge or anything like that, but it gives us a better understanding of where we are. And the cool thing about it is they're free, they're anonymous, so you can take them as many times as you'd like. They give you your results at the end too, including recommendations based on your results. So feel free to reach out. And I've been looking at the chats. Okay, gotta make sure. Okay, so looking at the chats, opening up the Q&A questions. I don't see anything. So I'll take that as a good sign that what I said makes sense throughout this kind of 15 minutes I've been spending with you all. Before I let you go, be free to continue on your day. I'm dropping a link in the chat that takes you to our feedback survey. We greatly value your feedback. We want to make sure that the information we are providing to you is helpful, is relevant, and they are things that you actually want to learn about, because if it's not, we want to change that, but we don't know that unless we ask you. So if you don't mind, please filling out that feedback survey for us. We would be eternally grateful too. Following up after this, I'll give you this recording, I'll give you these slides, I'll give you all the resources that we covered, and still not seeing any questions, but thank you for the kind comments and the thank yous in the chat. Give you about 6 minutes back to your lunch hour on this beautiful, whatever day it is, Tuesday, I think. Enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, everyone.